Tuesday, February 4th. I will call this meeting of the Madison Board of Selectmen to order at 4:32. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes from January 21st.
I think the only addition I would make would be page 3 of 4, halfway down, underneath the Chief Hayford and the bullet points, the paragraph below that, discussion of the cruiser warrant article ensued. I would just request that we add that Chief responded to a concern voiced at the budget meeting, and agreed that if we don't have a fourth, that we would not need a fourth police vehicle if we don't have a fourth officer, so that we can, if that happens before town meeting, we will cancel the warrant article then. Does that make sense?
I will make a motion to approve as amended.
Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. The last page. I don't think we sealed the minutes to the non-public.
You're right, we didn't.
Okay. Just,
Nope.
all right.
Cut and paste.
Templates.
Yeah, because you're gonna have to build it.
All right,
Motion to approve as amended.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, non-public minutes of January 21st that are not sealed.
And then, same thing on the back page. It said motion by Price, second by Gray to not publicly disclose. Other than that, I'm good with them.
Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve them as amended.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries. All right, we have a manifest, payroll $38,710.71, payroll liabilities $12,448, accounts payable $66,814.64, $200,000 to Madison Elementary School, for a total of $317,973.35.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment. Donna, the floor is yours.
Hi, Donna Vayu. It appears we have some new potential town leaders running for office.
It's possible.
They're kind of new names and new faces to the political scene. I'm wondering if the selectmen could offer a candidates night.
I think
I'd be
it's
good with
something
that.
we can discuss. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. We can take it up, I'll handle it with the school. That's all right with you, work it into the gym.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Thanks for the suggestion.
Other public comment. Paul?
I'm Paul McKenna. On the SDR issue, as far as the fund that has the money in it, where the people have voted to put the money in the fund, I'm concerned about if that's gonna be shifted into maybe the general fund or whatever. It's not,
It can't be.
okay, good, people have told me that. I don't know the mechanism of
The way
whether
that
it can or can't.
The way that it was voted as a warrant article, it can't be shifted to anything else or for any other purpose.
That's good to know, because the topic is still hot and heavy in other towns, and there's different derivatives of it. And after talking with Attorney Bolt, he seems to think that, you know, we have maybe a better case if we went after March 22 or something else. So I would personally hate to shift that fund, which you now told me can't be shifted, and not be able to do something that another town did. So basically.
That warrant article was good for 4 years, is that correct?
It was an expendable trust fund.
Oh,
so
that's
it's
right,
there
it
for-
was an ETF, so that money sits there indefinitely and can only be used for that purpose.
Until town meeting would change.
Until town meeting would have to change the use of those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole? I think that's Nicole.
Yep, on the subject of money for lawyers, instead of, using it against our own taxpayers, I was wondering if anybody has reached out to legal counsel on the manufacturer of the chemical that is causing the PFAS issue, to see if they can be held liable and have to pay for all of the remediation that the town is facing on all our wells and private wells and public wells. And
PFAS
the
is,
question has even been asked of the legal counsel.
PFAS is in Joy's court, so I'll.
I have
direct
not
that to her.
asked legal counsel. I had asked Chief Brooks if he could identify what foams we used. That way we could identify the manufacturer.
Yes.
I believe your answer was that that was not able to be produced.
Not by me, I mean, this happened when I was a kid. And our records at the fire station
Right.
they're not that good.
Because New Hampshire didn't outlaw it until 2019, the use of the AFFF foam, and we stopped using it.
Before that,
I don't know how much before though.
no. But there would be a class action type, I mean, this issue is not just in Madison.
No, you would think that if it was a potential lawsuit, class action would be statewide. But-
Yeah, they're doing it by state, the different class action lawsuits against different things. But I think manufacturers aren't necessarily, the class actions aren't necessarily by state, but other lawsuits are by state, actually. But who would have those records? I mean, they have to exist somewhere as to what was purchased.
Maybe she does.
Sharon?
I would think the town's purchase records go back 20, 30 years? So somewhere, no? How far
believe
back do
so.
the purchase
10.
records go?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think statutorily, it's only 7.
Yeah.
How, I have zero idea, how frequently do we purchase any kind of foam, let alone AFFF?
Well, I've been in this position for 6 years, I haven't bought any.
Okay.
And I don't remember when it was purchased before that. So, I mean, we just don't use a lot of it, fortunately.
Yeah.
But the foam we buy now is not the offending, that's been outlawed, you can't buy it if you wanted to.
Is there a way to, is there a process where you can take the sample that you have of the foam and figure out how old it is?
We don't have any of the
I don't
foam
have it.
that's in
Oh,
question.
It's all in the ground.
I thought you could take it out of the ground and do that.
Well, we do have chemical sampling of the soil and of the water.
Is there-
It's different chemical makeups depending where on the complex the sample was taken. The water up here behind the library has a different chemical makeup than the water in the monitoring wells down by the road. So
But
it's
whatever the chemical is there a way to date it?
it's not an individual chemical. They keep adding the number. Last time I heard it was over 12,000, 18,000 types of PFAS chemicals. We're testing for 4 in particular plus a combination. So the 4 that we're testing for are the most commonly identified as dangerous. So we have PFOA, PFOS, PFNA, and PFHX. So 2 of the numbers of 2 of those chemicals are high behind the library. The opposite 2 chemicals are high down in the well. And AFFF foam would be a combination of different chemicals. So there's a lot that happened in the area to produce that. But it's, unless we know what was purchased, it's hard to pin down as specific as what foam caused it.
Nicole?
So I guess my question is if the question was asked of our lawyer, and if our lawyer didn't have the answers, could he or she say, I don't, but this person, a colleague, has a vast experience with this, rather than holding taxpayers accountable?
Yeah, I have not asked,
Yeah, okay.
so that's on me.
So I was just wondering if I could
Yeah.
make that request.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't know.
yeah, that's a good ask, thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yeah, Donna Bayugan, with reference to the PFAS situation, is there any updated or new information that you would like to impart?
Yeah, sure, so,
I think, sorry, we have an area of the agenda
Oh,
for
you
Joy
do?
to get
It's
to
on
her
the agenda?
business. I'm sure that's in her
Oh, I'm
business, and we
sorry.
have guests here tonight, so I'd like to keep it to that. Is there any other public comment before we move on? All right. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think
That's
we'll get to that when we get to your list, if that's all right.
yep,
All right, so the first item on new business is Avatar's rep.
That's me. My name is Chad O'Barish. I work for Avatar, the firm you guys currently contract to do your assessing. This is the 5th year of us doing the assessing for you guys, and it is a reevaluation year. So the last time we did a reevaluation was 2020. So 2025, we got another one coming up this year. The good news is, last time we did it was a conversion from a previous methodology and model. The nice thing about it doing this process is that the methodology is going to stay the same. So if a taxpayer is looking at the property record card before and after, 90% of the town will look at the same exact information. So if they had an E1 neighborhood before, they'll have an A1 neighborhood after. It won't be different. So they'll be able to see that the value change really is just in the base land values and the base building rates. It's nothing to do with us changing the methodology on them. So the process, we already have started verifying the sales, because we're gonna be using a lot of the sales from 2024. We'll be using some of the newer sales as best we can for 2025, up until about probably April or May. So May and prior to 2024, we'll be using those sales to come up with our analysis. Any of the sales after May, we'll be using those as like a sanity check. So like, does the model that we created derive an assessment that equals the sales that we didn't know about? So we'll be verifying all those sales.
Chad, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt,
That's
just a couple questions was, you're taking sales from within Madison or from kind of within the valley?
Just Madison.
Just Madison, okay.
Just Madison. It's rare, especially these days, that we have to go outside of town, but if we couldn't get more than 20 sales within the town's perimeter, we might use a neighboring town,
Okay.
depending on how similar they are.
Okay, thank you.
But Madison, we've got more than enough sales, especially, not only that, but more than enough sales in each category, whether it's a property with a view, property without a view, property on the lake, not a lake, that sort of thing. We've got pretty good representation of all the different categories that you guys have in town. So there are some sales that we haven't visited yet, so some of the newer ones, I would say, I think since January till current, we'll run a new report and go visit those sales, and that's physically going out to the properties, making sure that the data that we have is accurate. We'll ask if they're home, we'll ask the new homeowners if they would allow us just to walk through and get interior. The nice thing about the sales is that we can always get the outside. The inside, some people might not feel comfortable letting us in, but sales, we have all the entire interior photos on the listing. So we usually get really good information on the sales. So we'll do that analysis, I'd say completing it right around April, May, and then we'll do the field review. So that's usually when you guys will start getting the calls like, hey, there's a car that came to my house, they didn't even come in and look at my home, how are they gonna give it an assessment? You guys are doing a cyclical process, so every year between 2020 and 2025, we were visiting properties, and it was 20% a year. I should know that. So we already have visited everyone's house. So this process, the field review, really is just driving up to the property from the road, if we can see it, and just comparing it to the sales that we have and saying, all right, if we called this sale a Cape, you know, good condition for its age, and this is a similar home and it looks the same, it should also be good condition. And then we're making sure that all the other things are correct as well. So that's all we're doing. We might be driving up driveways if we can't see the home from the road. Or if it says that there's a view on the property and we haven't been there in a little while, we might drive in just to get an idea of, has the view changed? Because trees grow and sometimes people log the property, so those properties, they might be the outliers where we do drive up. Typically, if we're there and it's like not, like we're sitting there for a while, I'll get out and knock and just let them know why we're there, but if it's one of those where we can just turn around, we'll usually just head right out.
Is the car marked?
The car is marked, and I also have a light on it too, so it kind of looks like an Eversource car. I will let the police know, they'll have my license plate number on hand, and I will also send out, Madison typically takes about 3 weeks to do the field review. So each week, it's something new that we've started doing, we try to give the police an idea of what part of the town that we'll be in, because we literally just drive road by road, so it's pretty easy to kind of give them an idea of where we're gonna be for that week, just so they know. So that process, hopefully in May, June, and then July, August is kind of when we go through everything, make sure that everything looks correct, and then we'll send out the hearing notices for taxpayers, and that will be, it's a one-page letter, it's gone through hundreds of iterations since we've been in business, and it just tries to give them the most information and gets them to kind of read all the information. One of the things that we added recently due to COVID, because we're seeing such huge appreciations, is the overall change in the value of the town. So I'm expecting probably a 60% increase, if not more, during this reevaluation. So that number will be in there. It's a number we always knew about, but as a company, we want to hear from taxpayers if they truly feel like their total value isn't market value. And our concern in the past was always if they see that number change and they realize, oh, my percent change is less than that, my taxes are going to be the same or lower. We don't want them not to call just because their taxes are going to be the same. If they really feel like that assessed value is too high, they should still contact us. But since we're seeing such huge appreciations, we felt it relevant to put that number in there because everyone gets concerned about what their taxes are going to be when they see that huge change. So that was one of the reasons why we started doing that, is to show that, like, yes, the taxes are going up a lot, but the tax rate should come down by a similar percentage. And that should be true for most of the town. I think it's pretty homogeneous, so I feel like 90% of the community will see a similar increase in their property values to what the overall town value change will be. So their tax burden should be pretty close to what it was before. The exception to that will probably be the lake communities, their appreciation, just because of the nature of the property and the demand for it, especially during COVID and currently. They appreciate it much faster than what the general level of the town is. So they'll see probably if they see a 60 or 70% increase in that letter, more than likely their assessment is going to represent something higher than that, 80 or 90 in that ballpark. So that process, I think, will happen right around July, August. We're hoping to get the hearings out, the hearing notices out, and then we give them about 2 weeks to kind of look at the link, go online and kind of compare their properties to other properties, make sure the information that we based it off of is accurate, and then they can set up an appointment to do a phone call with us. I think you guys were one of the first communities where we were doing phone calls pretty much 100%. They worked really, really well, especially because a lot of times people it's their second homes, they're not able to drive up here for a 30-minute appointment and then drive back. But we do offer now, because we're not, before it was COVID, so it was 100% by phone, we wouldn't even give you an in-person. Now we do offer it. People would like an in-person conversation. We do offer that during one day, and then if it fills up, too. But the phone calls have been pretty popular just because it's easy to, don't have to leave work, and then you don't have to wait for the next appointment if you're sitting in the town office. So that process will happen. And then once that's completed and we kind of go through all the hearings and try to address everyone's concerns, we'll send out a final notice of value, so they're notified that whether something happened during the hearing, whether we changed it or not. So some people, if they made an appointment and we didn't feel like a change was warranted, they'll still get a letter. It'll just be the same value that was on the preliminary as the final. But if we did make a change, they'll also know, because that adjustment will be reflected in the letter. It won't say what changed, it will just show the new value as a result. At that point, we usually tell people, usually it's very close to when we set the rate for the MS1. So typically we tell them, if we made an adjustment but you still feel like it's too high, we have to go through the abatement portion, or abatement process at that point. It's not, it's not beneficial to try to keep making phone calls and try to keep making changes at that point. It's definitely a abatement process, but that's usually, people usually follow that pretty well. So that all happens right around September, and then we get the new tax rate, and hopefully things will calm down once people realize the tax rates come down by a similar percentage. The thing that kind of happens along with that is the state, they will also be checking our work. So all of the sales that we verified, they will be taking a sampling of that and just quality checking and making sure that we are doing what we said we were doing. They will also get a copy of, so as a result of this whole process, we create a manual. It's called the use pad manual. It's a very thick, outlines exactly what we did with everything, what the tables were for our models, how the hearings went, how many we had, all that stuff. The state looks at that and makes sure that it's up to the standard that was set by the ASB. And then you'll get a report that essentially says it is compliant and they've met all the, or we have met all the requirements by the state. That process usually takes longer because there's a lot more than just Madison that's doing a reevaluation in 2025. So granted, we usually submit it pretty early on, but you probably won't see that report until maybe December, January of 2026. December 2025, January 2026. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers the whole thing, I think.
Do we have, or can we put together like a documented timeline that we could either put out on the town page or Facebook or something, just so folks during these 3 weeks expect to see the car?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, you'll be eligible to call to make an appointment. Just, can we put something like that together?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I can even give you a sample of the letter. So if you have any recommendations of changes, we'll happily hear it.
Well, I was even just thinking just like a visual timeline or something that we could make available to people.
That timeline is in the letter?
The timeline's not, because that letter doesn't come out until after we've done the field review. I can give you, it's tough. I could probably give you maybe like a month's notice of like when we'll start the field review process. Because that's kind of a moving target as other towns get done and when we can get to them. But yeah, I think I could probably give you at least a month's head notice of like, we're gonna be starting field review. And once we start field review, it is a ongoing process. We don't go off anywhere else, so it will be a solid, or a continued 3 weeks. But I can give you the timeline, and then I think probably week by week, we can give you an update as to what part of town we'll be in, so people can expect to see us.
Yeah, even just high level, I mean, that level of detail is fantastic.
Yep.
Even if we just have the key dates in a visual that we could put on,
Yep.
put on the town website so folks can just peek and
No, that's definitely.
And Linda gets to go look at the website,
Yeah.
rather than having to answer everybody's questions.
Also, so we have what's called an old to new report. We also run that generally. I mean, it's great for when we did like the reevaluation when it wasn't our model before, because we want to know if 90% of the town went up by a certain percentage, but some went up way more than others. We want to make sure that that wasn't like an error on our part. That report we usually will send to the board just before we send out the preliminary notice, just in case there are properties that you guys are aware of. They're like, why did this go up so much? Like, I'm firmly aware of that property, and it should have been relative to the rest of the town. And that's just to kind of hopefully stop any issues that you might already be aware of that, we won't want to send a letter to someone and have them go off the rocker if there's a reason why they shouldn't be, so.
And then, so, one last question. So you said, I just wanted to clarify, you said the overall town valuation to go up 60%?
It's gonna be close to that.
Okay,
We
and then.
haven't done the analysis, but just looking at what last year's mediation ratio is and where the market's going, it's gonna be, I would say, at least that.
Okay, so, and individual properties, the lake properties will be different, but the average property can also expect the value, like a $100,000 house would now look at a $160,000 value?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Because the last time it was done was just after COVID. I still remember I had a lot of people saying that the market was gonna crash and how can you assess it? It's so high right now, like it's gonna go down, but it's come up by close to 6% since then, so.
It seems like it's starting to, like that big COVID bubble is starting to deflate.
So what's happening, at least in what I've seen so far, is that yes, the values are coming down, but overall it's still an appreciation. So what we've been seeing is that like people will put a listing price on the market and then they'll slowly start dropping it because they've been testing it. But that resulting sale is still appreciably higher than where we were
Right.
before. Correct. Yes, things are slowing down. The average day on the market, we're just going back to about a month, 2 months. It's no longer like a bidding war and 7 days.
Right.
It's, so that aspect is certainly starting to, it's more normal, I'd say. I don't know off the top of my head, but most of the communities that we've seen, we're looking at like an 8% increase in the last year, whereas before it was 15, 20, so it's more reasonable, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Also, right.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
I will allow it just minimally. I don't wanna bombard Chad, but we'll allow a few questions and then we'll go from there, as long as it doesn't get out of control.
Appreciate that, thank you.
You talk about 20% visits every year. Who does the visiting?
Our company.
Your company?
Yep.
And when,
But also the state does do a quality check on that work as well.
okay,
So you
it's
might
not
get
the
it.
town, it's your company and the state.
Correct.
And is one allowed to request an in-house visit if they want it?
Correct, so typically, the way those visits would work is we send out a letter in the beginning of the year, we'll send out a letter to the property owner, letting them know that they were selected. We go out to the property at some point during that year. If someone's home, we'll ask at that point to go inside. If they do, great, and we check it off as seeing an interior, so you won't hear from us again for the next period. But whether you're home or not, if you don't want us to come inside, we mark it as just being outside measure. That notifies us to send a letter towards the end. It's usually in the fall up here, that we'll send a letter asking them like, hey, we missed you during our data verification process. Do you want to set up an appointment to have us go through the interior?
But
That's
you-
usually the time.
You can request it. Also,
Yep.
I have a question about, a new criteria has been put on the tax cards the last couple years. It's called lake influence. Is there objective data that qualifies that, tax?
New since we did the revale in 2020, or is it what done when we did the
It came
revale?
in somewhere between there. It's
Yeah.
called lake influence. And I haven't been able to find out what the objective data is. Because, as I look at properties that I think would have a lake influence, they do not. And those that have it shouldn't. I just was wondering is there objective data?
Well, it would hopefully come from sales. So anything that we apply to properties would typically come out of our sales analysis. That sounds like something that would be on properties that are in the vicinity of the lake and have access to either, whether it's public or not, they have a closer access that gives them more value or demand.
Right, and I understand that, but it's very, very varied.
Well, that might be something we fix during this
yeah.
revale.
And also, one more question, view tax. Lakefront is taxed how?
The waterfront is holding the value,
Okay.
as well as the
There
land
are
building.
houses that have virtually, on the lake, virtually have no view. And there are other houses that have the $1 million view.
Mhm.
And they're taxed the same, as far as their land goes.
Yes and no. So I believe, and I don't have cards in front of me, but the waterfront value includes an appreciation for the view. So if you look at the waterfront line, it will say water body, it'll say like Silver Lake with view. And it probably won't say with view, it'll say /W, view, VU. And then there'll be ones without. So all of the ones that are on like Plains Road probably have none. And the ones that are on the other side probably have a with view because they're out looking at Jacora.
It's actually just the opposite. The houses on Plains Road have a view tax, and the houses on Route 113 do not have a view
It
tax.
depends on where we're talking. So if you're
Yeah.
talking on the other side of like the railroad,
Mhm.
and they don't actually own waterfront, they will have a view value versus
Yeah.
properties on the water.
It's vague, it's cloudy, and, I would like some clarification as far as how are the houses on the lake with the $1 million view taxed differently than those on the lake without a view? I'll chat with you, Chad.
Yeah, it could be a conversation we have, absolutely.
Yeah, no, but I thought maybe there was some pretty objective data as far as the lake influence. Because there are houses on top of the lake, not lakefront, but 50 feet from the lake with no lake influence. And then there are other houses a half a mile away from the lake with lake influence. So just objective data, that's all I would like. Thank you.
Sharon?
Sharon Schilling. So Chad, I guess following up a little bit on Donna's question is, and a statement you made earlier about changing the model. Can you give us more examples of what changed in that model, how it affected the assessments at that time? And then, do you have some sort of a primer that explains terms like lake influence and view, so that I, as a common household owner, am able to say, okay, well, I don't have a lake influence, but what does that really mean? Does that mean that I'm on a lake, or does that mean that I'm on a tributary and whatever I do could influence the lake? And I think that would help those of us who aren't in the assessing business to understand what the process is and what it looks like for us.
Yep, so one of the new things that we've started since like 2023 is that on that online portal where you can see your data, if you scroll to the bottom, there is now a link for how to read my property assessment card, which kind of gives you acronyms. So if you're reading the notes and it says DNPU, what does that mean? It will have all those things in there. And then the second link that we started doing that really helps, because we had a lot of these questions, was that manual that we create, that's huge, we now do that prior to having the hearings. So we essentially do our job, have the hearings, and then we might make adjustments to that manual as a result of the hearings, but that manual is largely done. So now what we've done is that link will bring you to the manual, and you can read all of the descriptions, everything, definitions. It's got the tables. It will have information about what we're assessing for the lake, whether it's like property with a view, like property without a view. It will have everything in it. It's pretty dense. But it's one of those things where we want, our objective is, one, to be at market value, but more so to be fair and equitable, right? That's what we care about. And I get paid the same whether we do a good job or a bad job, but my life is made easier when we do a great job, and when everything is fair and equitable. So part of the hearing process is to get that feedback of everyone looking at our job, having access to the information and saying, I don't really see where you went this way. So hopefully during the hearing I can either say, this is why we went that direction and you're okay with it, or I'm like, yeah, you know what, we could probably do better in that section. Because we want to be fair and equitable. That's the ultimate job
Of course you do.
That's where we want to go down. So being more transparent and having that whole use patent manual online is just to help. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bringing up fair and equitable, I don't know if you saw the paper where Conway is having an issue with the assessing organization that they contracted with, that the homeowner's concern that are bringing the issue to light is that there is a fair and equitable distribution between the businesses being taxed and the homeowners being taxed. They feel like that burden is on the homeowners more than it is on the businesses. What process precautions, steps does Avatar take to make sure that that isn't going to happen here?
So that's that field review process. That's one of the things that we, even when towns try to look at our contract and say, can we not do this because it's such an expensive portion, we always will say no. Like, we have to do the field review process because we have to put eyes on the properties. part of the issue in Conway is that they looked at the sales for commercial, adjusted those values, and then didn't do anything to the other properties that didn't sell. So you saw, if you looked at the assessments, sale properties that were commercial went up 69%, properties that weren't commercial, or that were commercial but didn't sell, only went up 13. And that's usually an indication of what they call sales chasing, because typically if you're gonna adjust sales and then go and do your field review and adjust everyone to match what you did for your sales, usually there's a pretty equitable change, whether it was a sale property or not a sale property. But it's hard to do that when you're not field reviewing, because you don't know, like, all right, well, this property we called good condition, this looks exactly the same, it's in its average, we should really be calling it good if we're gonna be fair and equitable. So that's the big reason as to why we do the field review, but also, it's hard to say this without patting ourselves on the back, but like, we have a standard, so part of our standard makes it easier for our field guys to make sure that all our data is accurate. So if we're calling your home an A1, the same guy is gonna call all the other homes that are similar to A1. And follow condition as well, so there's not a lot of, the problem with Conway is they're using Universe, which is it's a software that not too many people use. I think there might be 1 or 2 towns in the state that still use it, and it's super convoluted. So if you've got field guys that have never used it, they don't know what they're entering or how they're looking at data, it's hard to keep things consistent. Part of our job here and what makes it us makes our job easier is that we do the same thing in Madison as we do in other towns. So no matter who comes to do the data verification process, they know exactly what they're looking for and what they're doing. It's a standard that we use throughout all our communities.
One more question. Chad, could you just briefly, in 1 or 2 sentences, tell us how you come up with a view tax?
It's based on sales. So like if we take a property with...
Isn't it based on the view too?
Yes, but the sale would indicate whether views have value or not. So if we've got properties that, you know, it's a Cape and it doesn't have a view and it sells for 400 grand, and then we've got a property that's a Cape, similar type property, and it sells for 500, and the only difference is that now it's looking at a mountain, that $100,000 is associated to the view, assuming that everything else is exactly equal.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that's, I mean, that's the same thing for waterfront too.
All right. Any
Good
more,
luck.
any more quick questions for Chad before we release him?
I have a question, just at the bottom of the the front of the property card, when it talks about changes over time, put in a new roof in 2016 sort of thing. Do your associates put that in? Does the town provide you that information based on building permits or?
No, I mean, a lot of time it's building permits, but also just talking with the homeowners, because a lot of people don't pull permits for roofs. It depends on who's doing it and the town, but a lot of times it's just talking to the homeowners and asking questions. That's part of the data verification process, absolutely.
Thanks.
All right, well, we appreciate your time, Chad.
Thank you. Have a
Very
good year.
much.
Thank
We're
you.
all set there. I'm sure you'll get plenty of phone calls.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure. It's always a good time. Well, that's the part of the job I like, is the actual hearings.
You're a better man than I.
Everyone's good.
All right.
So I think you're,
MCC Chairman,
can Chad go if he wants?
oh, Chad is free to leave.
Okay.
Run.
You said they use.
You don't wanna hang around?
So where do you guys use?
Ours.
Avatar.
Yeah. I would run if I were you, Chad.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you very much.
He's such a nice guy.
Right,
We are on to the MCC.
okay. We sent you a letter in January. It explains the situation. Upper Saco Valley Land Trust has made substantial progress towards its acquisition of the Chain of Ponds property. So it's a matter of the easement and the timing of our completion of that review and substantiating a completed negotiated transaction for the easement. In conversations with Upper Saco, it was described as an issue of certain financial sources having a due diligence requirement. and they expressed a timetable of 90 days. So the anticipated closing, I think, is November, right? So you look at that in terms of pushing it back 90 days. And they also, in their due diligence, require a completed negotiated conservation easement. So that pushes the timetable to July for us to have the ability to complete the for them to complete the transaction in November. So the issue for us is that we will have to engage an attorney to deal with the conservation easement. We have taken the position that we don't spend any money on this until it's a certainty that there will be a closing. Upper Saco has provided evidence that they have sufficient funds to make the acquisition. And the only issue on the disbursement of the funds is this due diligence requirement by at least 3 of them, I think, that are involved in a review before they release the funds. So essentially, we have not engaged an attorney, but we're making decent progress internally within the commission with respect to a review of the draft contract that was provided by Upper Saco. So the issue here is that we would like to engage, we'll be able to engage an attorney in the March timeframe. That would give us sufficient time to conclude all of the relevant issues associated with the negotiation. So that's it. We're requesting the ability to engage the attorney at an appropriate time in order to conclude the negotiations in the July timeframe. There are certain actions that are required. One of the major items is a baseline report, and Upper Saco will be dealing with that. And that is a review process that we will have to go through in terms of making a determination as to the baseline condition of the property as stated. So there is some level of effort associated with that. But essentially, it's the attorney's fees, filing fees, and some administrative work, including the review of the baseline report and all that, aggregates to approximately $5,000. So that's what we're looking at.
I know there'd been discussions of using the town attorney for legal review of the document.
Yes.
What is the Conservation Commission, how they feel about that?
Well, what we did is we sent the attorney a draft and said, we don't want to engage you to review the document, but just give us an estimate of the time required to conclude the negotiation. So he provided us with an estimate of $3,000. Coincidentally, Upper Saco's estimate of the legal fees is $3,000. So it sounds like a reasonable estimate. So the town attorney has expressed an ability and willingness to pursue this particular.
Oh, okay, because the overall legal line was underspent this past year, so do we need, I guess my question is, do we need the extra money set aside in a warrant article, or can that be taken out of the budget?
If I do recall correctly, we have already cut the legal line for our town attorney this year once or twice, and it wouldn't be in there anyway because we cut it at a meeting and the new draft shows the lower number regardless. So
I
it's
have,
either add 3,000 to the line that's in there or use the warrant article that they're trying to use. My understanding is they're gonna need that warrant article anyway for other related expenses.
I have, looking at the warrant, legal, we had approved 28,800, we'd expended 18,000, and we cut it down to 24,800. So it looks like we just cut 4,000 out, but we underspent by 10.
were to use, go ahead, Mike.
I think the funding mechanism is taken care of by the Conservation Commission through the warrant articles and the operating budget. That's not the issue. What Ralph is seeking is permission of the board to engage town council on behalf of the Conservation Commission.
I'm fine with it.
I hesitate, and simply because I don't know that the easement is necessary.
Why not?
This land's going into conservation whether Madison has its hand in it or not. Upper Saco Valley Land Trust is going to buy this land and put it into conservation regardless of whether or not Madison has its hands in it.
My understanding, go ahead.
And I don't know what we're going to get out of this easement after giving the conditional approval before, and then having time to divest and to look into this. We're getting an easement on a property we would already have access to and would already be in conservation. And they don't necessarily need our money to get the project done, is my understanding.
It's kind of two topics there. The first of which, the easement is, we get a say in how the property is used, correct?
Correct.
So I think that's important for Madison residents to have a say in,
Not
regardless of
absolutely
who owns it.
important, but I
Also-
think that the say is minimal, given the restraints put on conservation land to begin with.
Well, the funding sources are looking for a independent party to manage the conservation activities on the property. So they will be in serious trouble with respect to the financing of this if we don't agree to a conservation easement. I think it's critical that we, as a town, have input into what goes on at that particular property. And that I can acknowledge in the draft, there are things that we, or at least I, can't speak for everybody on the commission, I object to. Boundary adjustments, whether or not commercial activities could take place on the property, things of that nature. So there are a whole series of things that we have to negotiate with Upper Saco in terms of getting this aligned with where we are. And I think it's important that that property is 625 acres that affects the aquifer substantially, be properly managed in a way that's independent of a property owner. So you have a property owner who has rights to, with cutting and things of that nature. If they have a desire to timber off property, they have to come through with a forest management plan. We have to approve the forest management plan in order for that timber harvest to take place. So there are a lot of things that are independent of a property owner versus somebody who has an environmental interest. And I believe that that's very important, that's significant. And the $213,000 that we agreed to is a principle that we made many months ago. And that was discussed, there was a public hearing, there was widespread approval of this as a value that is something for the town, independent of what the state permits and all of that. You have issues that I think represent significant matters that the easement holder has in relationship to the management of the property.
I'm gonna put you on the spot, Mr. Brooks, but you're also on the commission. Do you have any input as to whether or not this easement is absolutely necessary?
No, but I'm probably more critical of the draft than even Ralph is, and he's marked it up substantially. But I do think it's important to have There are certain things, if not agreed to in the draft, I would vote against it. And I've been open about that at the commission. Because there are certain things that are, you know, if we're gonna have public rights, public access, spend public dollars, there'll be no restrictions on recreation, hunting, fishing, biking, hiking, all that stuff. Watching that language very closely. I think it's important to be able to engage town council separately of the town's retainer. A paid review of this document and draft to make sure that the positions that we wanna take within the draft are defensible. Because I don't look lightly at spending $200,000+ for a non-deeded ownership.
Mr. Chairman, is it the commission's position that recreational activity should be in that easement?
Yes.
If the language of the easement and the understanding of whether or not it's actually required, could that not be part of what the lawyer does for us, is take a look at that and render a decision, render an opinion, they're never gonna give you a decision, opinion as to whether or not it's necessary, and would that not then be money well spent to have that legal look at it?
Yep. I didn't say no, I just
No, I
have
know.
questions.
I'm just-
And I have some skepticism over the whole thing, but regardless, I will make a motion to allow that.
I'd like to have Linda from
Yeah.
Upper Saco make a comment.
Absolutely.
Upper Saco Valley Land Trust, and I appreciate the working with the Madison Conservation Commission on the easement on this property. And there is precedent for it in other organizations, other situations. It's called belt and suspenders protection. We'll own the property as, you know, the landowners, but we'll have the Madison Conservation Commission keeping an eye on us to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing on that property. So it's not a bad thing.
Are we the belt or the suspenders? I prefer to be the belt.
Okay, we'll be the suspenders.
All right, I will make a motion to allow the MCC to engage town's attorney. I think it will need to take place after town meeting once this is voted on, but otherwise I make that motion.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Town meeting council representation agreement. So it sounds like we know Cordell's not available. The gentleman that we had the last 2 years is also not available. But it sounds like Attorney Bolt
Yep,
is available.
he's going to sit for us that day. And he's already the ZBA attorney, and he knows, familiar with Madison. I worked with him a few years ago, when we were going through the lawsuits with the BTLA for all the PSNH and that kind of stuff. I worked with him then, and I like him a lot.
Any questions or concerns, Joy?
Yeah, so basically what's sitting in front of us is a waiver, that basically saying that he can, that this is just for special counsel for town meeting, and he's allowed to, down the road, if somebody wants to use him to sue the town hypothetically, that he can do that and that there's no conflict of interest sort of thing. Is that kind of how I'm reading this?
I honestly didn't read it, but I did give it to Cordell,
Yeah.
and he said it's
Standard.
It's standard, if there's nothing wrong with it, and he also said that he's glad he's a single guy for his running his own place without any associates, because his would have been a whole lot shorter. So,
Okay, and then, so do we have an actual agreement? This is specifically the waiver, right?
this will engage him for
Okay.
town meeting, that's what this document will do.
Yes, it's a conflict of interest waiver and representation agreement,
Okay.
strictly for that day.
I have a question.
There we go.
Sure.
Hi, so I think I just heard you say that the other person that we've used is not available, we've used them the last 2 years. Cordell is now, for the third year, not available. Is there-
Cordell will never be available until he gives up his moderator position in the town that he lives in.
And we knew
Do
that
we
when
have
it was
any
engaged.
expectation that that's gonna happen anytime soon?
No, Cordell was engaged under that premise, knowing that. I think Cordell's expertise and what he's done for us so far has been pretty great. Not having him at town meeting for a few questions isn't the end of the world, especially when we have attorneys like Chris Bullock available.
I don't know that I agree with
That's okay.
that. We can agree to disagree, but I think the person who manages and oversees, to an extent from a legal standpoint, the everyday affairs of your town, and then historically is not present at your town meeting, which is one of the biggest events the town has that brings all of its citizenry together to discuss these particular things, I think is not necessarily the most prudent of moves. And I get that we already signed an agreement with him that states that, but.
Well, and I think this is the next best thing. I mean, Chris Bolt also has his hands with the ZBA and has a firm understanding.
I'm aware of that. But I don't know that he has a firm understanding of the rest of town business, because he's not included in any of the non-public meetings or discussions you have about any of those types of things, not necessarily included in any discussions that deal with budgetary issues. He is well-versed in zoning and zoning board of adjustment endeavors and has done wonders for us. I will always sing his praises, but to take that person and then put them in a position to answer questions without appropriate
there are gonna
background,
be any
puts him
question-
on the spot.
I don't think there are gonna be any questions that would be addressed to the attorney that we would be answering all the questions. We always answer all the questions. It's just a matter of, I don't know how to word it. But I don't think the attorney speaks or answers a whole lot of questions at town meeting anyway, I'm sure you've been there, but
Legal, just legal part.
yeah, it's the legal aspects of town. I don't think the attorney's not answering questions regarding town business. That's our job.
And Chris was or if he still is, a selectman in the town he lives in for years, so he's well versed with town meetings and that kind of.
Good.
Joy?
I'm good with it.
Right.
Put in the signature items, it's just one signature.
Do you need to vote?
You can.
I will make a motion to engage and sign a special counsel conflict of interest waiver for Attorney Bolt for town meeting representation.
And the representation agreement.
And the representation agreement. I'm sure Linda will fix everything I just said anyway. Do I have a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's just me if you wanna throw it in there. All right, budget and warrant review. We have our public budget hearing next, is it next Tuesday? Next Tuesday at 7 p.m., along with about 1,000 other meetings in that gym. Is there anything specific you wanna hit on, Joy, or anything that you found that you think needs addressed?
Quick question on warrant 19. That is the $5,000 warrant article 19? That's the $5,000 that we just spoke about for the attorney?
It sounds like, oh yeah, today or tomorrow is the deadline? Today is the deadline for petition warrant articles. All but one that we were expecting are in.
And we got a bonus on the 24.
And yes, we got a bonus article. A petition article to see if the town will vote to adopt an incompatibility of offices ordinance as follows: no town employee shall at the same time hold the office of town selectman. But other than that, there was only one charity article that didn't make it on, and they didn't make it on last year either. So we're taking them off our expected list next year.
Well, they wrote us a letter saying
Oh, they did?
yeah, they were gonna do it, so,
Who was it?
Northern Human Services.
Northern Human Services?
I have one at the library, I don't remember what it is for though, and it's just sitting there, so.
Today is the dead.
I'm not sure, and it looks like a photocopy was made with it, so I don't know if that was just waiting to get extra signatures or,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
You can ask Joe.
Uh,
Is that something hypothetically, like, you can't add a warrant article on the floor, so like this couldn't be added
No.
on the floor to donate to them, but you said they also didn't do it last year either?
No, right, yeah, 2024 that says 0, they didn't ask for anything last year, they sent the letter again last year and didn't end up coming through with a petition.
Did we ask Joe?
Ask Joe.
Joe Dane, wasn't he kind of gathering the charity warrant article stuff together?
Oh, it gets submitted to me and I give it to him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't,
so.
I thought he was also like
Well, he's
contacting
in-
them directly to follow up with them.
Well, he was looking, he did reach out to, I know, the way station, and, but I don't know, we typically don't reach out to anybody. But- The Article 21, the one for the watershed management,
mhm.
I've got some language there. And I talked with Dave Scarborough today, and basically, the original language that that Bill Lord and those guys were talking about was about creating a expendable trust fund to put the money into, and I had a discussion with Dave today explaining that, well, that would like delay it by like a month and a half every time you wanna, so we took that wording out. This hasn't been approved by DRA or the attorneys or anything yet, so, it's essentially saying what we wanna do. And the mechanics of how it all happens, I don't know as though that necessarily has to be in the warrant article. But DRA will be sure to let us know if it's appropriate, and I'll have a conversation with Michelle and explain to her the theory on how it all works, and she's probably been up against this before with other towns, so.
I have a question.
Sure.
This warrant article indicates that SLAM is going to pay the 1% interest on this loan
Mhm.
via a donation?
My
I
understanding.
thought they were paying it directly to the state, that they were paying, they're not.
No, we have to pay the state, everything comes through the town and gets paid.
My understanding is SLAM already has enough money to take care of that 1%.
They do, but things happen between now and then, and I just wanna make sure that they're actually on the hook for this, and that the town is not. That if something were to happen to SLAM and their coffers got drained, that the town is then not necessarily not on the hook for it. I recognize it's probably only gonna be about $1,000. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge amount, but again,
Can I mention my conversation with Dave today regarding that?
Absolutely.
So essentially, the way this is gonna work is work gets done, state of New Hampshire DES is notified, okay, we finished $10,000 worth of work. DES will give the town of Madison a check for $10,000, and in my mind, this is the way the whole thing is gonna work, short of the auditors telling me different, but we would deposit that money into the general fund in a line, we'll call it the watershed management line. That $10,000 will get deposited in there, then the town of Madison will pay that bill with that same $10,000. And when Dave and I were talking about the same thing with the interest, and he said and I said this would be up to the selectmen to decide the mechanics of it, but they were willing to put that money up front, whether it went into escrow account or we just put it into the general fund to sit there for, till the end of the project to make sure that that $1,000, $2,000, whatever they were willing to put up would be there already, to not have to worry about the end of the project and them not having any money. They were more than willing to give it to us ahead of time.
What's the disadvantage of doing the ETF?
Well, so mostly time would be the issue, because so if we ask the state for the reimbursement, they give it to the town, we have to give it to the trustees of the trust funds, they have to deposit into their account. Then we know we have to pay this bill, because that's the reason we were able to ask for the money. So then we have to do all that paperwork to ask them for the money back again, wait for them to have a meeting, which only happens on the second Thursday of every month, for them to write a check back to us so that we can write the check to the vendor. They won't write a check directly to the vendor, so it has to come back to the town. So it's a lot of just putting the money and depositing and moving it around, when in my theory, it would just go into and come out of. And at the end of the whole thing, there wouldn't be any money left, or whatever is left would probably be the residual from the interest that the SLAM would have put in.
Where does the donation go? Would SLAM's donation go into, you said, the general fund?
In my theory, I see that either that or in an escrow account, where it would just sit there until the end of the project to make sure that that money is sitting there ready to be used to pay off that interest. Unless the auditors allow us just to deposit it in to the general fund and hold it there. I'm not sure the mechanics of how that would work, but I think personally, doing all the, excuse me, doing all the paperwork, that an expendable trust fund will just be, it would be a disaster, and it would delay everything, because you can only do, it would take 6 weeks to get the money back that we actually had in our hands in the first place.
Yeah, I remember one part of the conversation with Dave and Bill was that any vendors would know to do like a 60 to 90 day, so that they know there's gonna be a delay because of how the money has to be handled.
If they were gonna give us the $100,000 right up front, I'd say I'd be all over the ETF idea.
Yeah.
You know, cause it's gonna sit there, and then we could just say, okay, we got this bill, you know, paperwork, okay, $10,000, great. But if it's gonna be ask 10,000 here, ask, you know, a lot of mechanics to it, I personally don't see the reason for it.
I don't see it, no, just for the paperwork shuffle alone.
Again, I have another question. Linda, you're stating if it's gonna be that way. Do we not have a concrete plan from them? I thought we did as to exactly how they were gonna do this, and, I mean, I think before we're kinda late, but, before you go to the townspeople and ask them to vote on something like this, those details should be
Which details
clear.
exactly?
The details of how this is all gonna work.
How the money
Well,
comes
that
in.
is how it works. You get the bill, you apply for money from the state, and then you get the money and you pay them. That's,
I can't recall if that's actually the way it works. I can't
Right.
recall
that
if.
is exactly what Bill sat here and said.
Okay,
Right.
I'm trying to remember.
They give us installments.
Right,
When we get to a certain point, because when I was talking with Dave today, I specifically asked that. I said, so if we have a bill, do we have to give that bill to DES? He said, no, we notify DES that we have a bill here for $10,000 for this is the work that they performed, and they will
And
send us
DES
$10,000.
requires no validation or verification that we have a $10,000 bill. I would think you'd have to upload a copy of it.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know the mechanics, but at the same time, I don't know as though the mechanics need to be in this warrant article.
No,
for
but I
the-
think when it comes to explaining it on the floor at town
Right.
meeting, all of those details should be known so that it can be explained to the taxpayer
Right.
how this is going to work.
And I'm 100% sure that Bill will be there to do that. And SLAM will be there to do that, the people that are running this project. I'm not gonna have my hands in the pot, nor is Linda gonna have her hands in the pot of getting this money necessarily.
Yes, she
To the
is.
extent that you're looking at it, I think.
I'm not gonna be applying for it.
No, but you have the paperwork trail. You're gonna have the paperwork, cause the
No.
money's coming into the town, going out of the town.
Right, that, but I'm not gonna have the paperwork of what was actually done and applying to the state and everything for it. I'm gonna get a check from the state of New Hampshire for $10,000 and I'm gonna deposit it and then I'm gonna write a check for $10,000.
How is the state of New Hampshire going to know that we need a check for $10,000?
That's not from us, SLAM,
SLAM.
these guys who are in charge of this whole project will be monitoring all of that.
And so how will you know that they've applied for money?
I would imagine
It's
we
just
have a
gonna show up?
conversation. Well,
Slam's running the show, that's my point. Slam will be at town meeting to explain it. There is a certain point at which you have to trust the people that you engage to do a job. And I have a significant amount of trust in previous selectman Lord to do the job that he says he's going to do, the way that he said he was going to do it. And I am not going to sit here and micromanage every single person in this town to the point where I spend hours and hours and hours every night wondering the mechanics of every little thing that goes on. Bill came in here and explained the process. He explained that we would be on the hook for $0. He explained that they would get bills and they would get installments from the state. The money would be flowed through the town of Madison, but the town of Madison would be on the hook for $0. I trust him to do his job. And at some point, you've got to have trust in the people that you put in the position to do that job.
I'm not saying I don't trust him, so don't put words in my mouth.
I'm not.
Stop, let me talk.
Excuse me.
Let me
This,
talk, I
no,
let you.
hold on. This is my meeting. I am the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I have no obligation to allow you to speak at this time. And people come into these meetings every other Tuesday and yell at this board, scream at this board, swear at this board, tell this board they're not doing their job. And to be honest, I'm tired of it. I told you something. I gave you the answer to your question. The conversation is over with. Don't tell me to stop at my meeting.
Noted. However,
No, it's
do
done.
not presume
We're done.
I distrust anyone.
We're done.
And I've not raised my voice, and I've not yelled at anyone. I'm asking simple
I
questions.
said we're done.
Oh, this-
Selectman Gray, do you have a list?
I think I have similar questions to you, so I'll give Dave and Bill a shout just to make sure that, I think I understand what you're asking and I think I have the same question, so. With that.
Thank you.
Yep, and I apologize for the way you were spoken to. In terms of the PFAS, I was speaking with Will Cox and Martin, today. We are looking to have them, at this point, one of the final 3 houses that hasn't been tested has agreed to be tested, and we're making arrangements to test it, but we're trying to coordinate, can I hurry up and get the other 2 so that it is joint? We talked about the possibility of having a local company do it, but for data integrity purposes, we do want to keep this PFAS testing with Wilcox and Barton. So we're just kind of hammering out some of those details to get that done. Madeline was going to call the state DES today to follow up on their response to that massive fall sampling data transmittal that was sent. That's also on the website under the health enforcement, or the code enforcement health officer, to see if they agree with Wilcox and Barton's plans, which include the spring sampling event, which will expand the radius to 1,000 feet from the initial well, from 500 feet. So it'll include additional properties and retesting of the original properties.
How many properties, do you know?
17, including 17 wells, was the first 500 feet. So I don't know off the top of my head how many will be in the 1,000. It'll be the 17 plus another 500-foot radius.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Yep. Oh, and we confirmed with DES that the funding that Mike initiated the process for, and Linda filed the paperwork for us, that 68,000 is still coming through, that any federal funding freezes do not affect that because it is state funding.
Thank you.
Anything else on your list?
No, I think that's good for now.
Right. Heather's not with us tonight. As far as rec goes, basketball's in full swing. Girls team remains undefeated. Boys team has a 50-50 record, and the tournaments are on February 15th at Conway Rec facility. I don't have anything on my personal list. So Linda, you got nothing for Linda. Chief?
On the budget side, the state, Secretary of State and other parties that be have authorized the use of the accessible voting system that most people probably haven't even seen it, but the big white, looks like a big marshmallow. It's a handicap voting booth. It's big enough to fit a wheelchair in. It has a tablet that people with any form of tactile disability, you can listen with headphone, vote by voice. You can tap the touch screen. It's accessible to people with disabilities, various different disabilities. They've authorized its use for local elections. However, we would have to pay the programming to have our ballot information uploaded into that device. The cost for, and I just sent, to get an estimate, I sent last year's ballots, sample ballots, and we had a two-sided, two-page ballot, basically. It's $600. Also $600 for the school. So for $1,200, we can get this device programmed to use it.
Okay.
I don't like spending, historically, it's minimal use, even in the big elections. I know who it is because I helped them use the machine, but I'm not gonna use a name. One person has used it in each election, basically, since we got the device.
Okay.
And I myself have used it just to prove that it works, to myself, prove that it works. I guess what I'm asking is I need to increase my vote tally setup line in the election budget by $600 to cover the town's portion of that programming. I am not willing to risk anything by, they've made the technology available to us. I don't feel comfortable not using it, even though financially I don't like spending money that
We're probably not gonna.
if I didn't do it, I'm afraid 18 people would walk in and need to use it, and we don't have it, we could have it, and then it's a kick in my face, and I don't wanna get kicked in the face, so.
Yep.
If I could increase that line by $600, I talked to Jim Curran last night at the school deliberative to let him know, because this is a fairly recent development. And somehow I'm confused, a lot confused, because number one, I until the sun sets tonight, I can't formulate a ballot until we know whether or not we have warrant articles to add. So tomorrow, I'll be putting everything together to submit to LHS to have ballots printed. Then I can send an actual ballot to this state contractor that will program the device. The confusion for me is they already sent me the device. The state did, so I literally, like, I don't know what to do. Am I gonna have to take this thing to a vendor to be programmed? I don't know. It's a first time for me, but I wanted to bring it to the board because I need $600 that I didn't plan in my budget for. But we do only have the one town and school election this year, so. And this would be the only election that we would have to pay. The state ordinarily has it programmed for the other elections. On the,
One second,
I have a
Karen.
question.
Good.
For Mr. Brooks, would this be a recurring $600 every year for the state and town, or for the town election, town meeting?
yeah,
I just didn't know if it was a one-time setup
no,
fee
no,
you
it's a-
download from the cloud or.
no, it's a programming, like, each year the ballot looks different. I mean, we don't have any zoning amendments this year, so that we wouldn't have those warrant articles, but like, last year, we had a petitioned article to go to a 5-member board of selectmen. Certain articles like that, and that came in by petition, that has to go on the official ballot. So theoretically, something could have happened by the end of business today. But yes, it's a lot of money to me, but it's $600 is the fee to program whatever our ballot looks like into that device, because it really is pretty cool. When they first came up with a system for people with disabilities, it would print out how they voted on a piece of paper that would then be hand counted, which to a certain extent compromised their anonymity, because if all of us working at the polls knew that only one person went in that tent and used that device and only one ballot had to be hand counted, you would know whose it was. Or, 5 or 6 people would know. This programming, the device that they're using now, they programmed it in such a way that you get the same ballot as everybody else, and however you need to use that machine, be it by microphone, touchpad, keyboard, however, you put your ballot into the printer and it marks your ballot, which will then get read by the voting machine, so your ballot is treated exactly the same as everybody else's. So there's no danger of your anonymity being lost. So it is kind of cool in that respect, but.
Do we still have a count as to how many people use it?
No, I do, but like I can tell you, it's one person from memory, and I'm not gonna tell you who that is.
No, I just mean like at the end of the day when votes are counted,
You won't
can we
have
see
any
that there were
idea,
5 by tablet, 6?
You have to, no, I don't keep track of that, because it's marking a regular election day ballot. There's nothing different about the ballot.
It's just a different process for marking the ballot.
Right. And I will know because there's a access code that has to be entered to allow somebody to use a tablet. Nobody can just walk in there and use it. I have to know, because I have to like wake it up with this code to allow it to be used, and then it shuts down.
And then there's an interface between the tablet and the voting machine.
Nope.
It prints out a ballot to be
It
put in?
prints out, you feed your blank ballot into the paper feeder of the printer, and the printer marks your ballot
And it spits it back out.
and you take that ballot and,
Put it
go
in
over
again.
and put it in with all the other ballots. It gets counted the same way. So anyway, that's on the budget piece, so. And like I said, I just get personally nervous. As a fiscal conservative, I said, if one person's gonna use it, $1,200, I already cut the budget and this and that, but I'm afraid accessibility, it's one of those things. It's important.
If you don't do it, we'll need it for a dozen people.
Exactly, and also, even if it is just one person, their ability to be able to negotiate the voting process without too much fanfare and, because
It's the right thing to do.
It's important.
it's unfortunately, technology is expensive, and this is one of those occasions where, and on the, switching gears to the appeal of the denial on the Modoc Hill Road culvert.
Yep.
I did spend a significant amount of time going through all the documentation that I have, assembling a chronology of events, which I've reviewed with Linda, and she has provided me with some detailed information from some of the dates and times and conclusions that I had in my notes weren't accurate, because certain things meetings were scheduled that I had a copy and I had a date, but she reminded me that, we had to postpone that meeting or such. So I've got to go through and amend what I have, and I still need to sit down with Josh. He's been out of, had some training classes that he's been going to, so I haven't had a chance to sit down with him to the scope of work, when work was done, and what exactly was done. at the incremental stages that, in any event, I told you I was gonna have a draft for you this meeting. I have a draft, but I'm not ready to give it to you. I will have it to you in 2 weeks, and we're well within the 60-day timeline by that time. I'm hopeful that after the meeting 2 weeks from now, the following Wednesday, it will be getting sent out to the state for their review and approval to submit to FEMA.
Thank you.
And I'm trying, Linda made me aware of the last thing, and this was back to the fire department. Did this list come from our insurance company? They're preemptively warning us, I guess, of, we have, once a vehicle that we own becomes 25 years old.
Actually, I think it's only fire apparatus and ambulance that falls
Well,
under
right,
now that
because they're big,
right.
expensive
Yeah.
vehicles. Let me start by saying, every vehicle that we have right now today is insured at replacement value, with the exception of the 1977 AMC, which that vehicle, we hold insurance on it, but it doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the State Department of Forest and Lands. So, but next year, our engine 2, which is a 2001, will be 25 years old, and it will no longer, they will insure it at market value, not replacement value. So this is something worth noting, but I'm not, it doesn't make me nervous. It's just, it's one of those, I hope nothing ever happens to, but the fact is, our newest truck happens to be the most expensive truck. We spent $400 and some thousand in 2016. To replace that truck today is getting very close to $1 million. If something were to happen to that truck that required its replacement by insurance, they would replace that truck with the $1 million truck. What this is telling us is, next year, if something happens to engine 2, they will replace it at what that 2001 vehicle is worth on the market, not what it would cost to replace it.
Which is probably about half or a third of what it would cost to replace it.
It might even be
Less.
lower than that, but like I say, my plan is, we're getting as much, with the exception of the primary piece, that's our newest truck, it needs to be the best that we can afford to have, which it is right now, and it will be. I don't think I'll see the replacement of that truck in my lifetime. With our support vehicles, engine 2 is our prime. If we have a major incident that requires major water, that is our primary pumper for that purpose. It has the 3,000 feet of large diameter hose on a reel that it has a specific job and purpose. It is our oldest truck because it gets the least amount of use, again, fortunately. But when we need it, it's one of the best in the valley for doing what it needs to do. My plan for that truck is to put a new chassis underneath it, use the existing body, upgrade the pump, because the pump is 25 years old. And that's a project that's planned for 2 years from now, I think, 2027. But again, I bring it up only because the insurance company is throwing a red flag, and just letting you know it is something that I'm aware of. And again, good Lord willing, nothing ever happens that we have to claim insurance, but
Right.
if we do, this is the next truck that will be getting upgraded. And from what I understand, based on what we just did with the 1989 rescue truck, insurance will upgrade that to a 2022. So when we do this and put a new chassis underneath it, it will get upgraded and
To a 2027.
go back to a higher quality in the insurance, eyes of the insurance company. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm very well aware of what they're saying, but in the interest of, we can't Fire trucks are expensive, they all can't be new. And as much life as I can get out of the trucks that we have, I'm going to, and if I can do simple, and that's relatively speaking. A truck chassis is almost a couple $100,000, but it's cheaper than $1 million.
So which vehicle you're looking to update the chassis?
I'm not, it's the engine 2, it's the 2001 Freightliner currently. And I think when I updated my CIP information, I made a note that it was planned for a cab, chassis, and pump refurb.
And then what you have in your hand though is that 1977 AM General?
No,
We
this
don't
is-
own that
This is
truck.
our whole fire department fleet from the insurance company.
Okay.
We have to provide, based on an agreement that the town of Madison has with the state of New Hampshire, we have to insure the vehicle because we house it in our fire station, but it doesn't belong to us and we don't have to replace it.
All right, so we don't need it.
We
On
don't
the
need a
CIP.
capital plan for, we could send that truck back to the state tomorrow if we didn't want it anymore. That's, least of my worries, it's a great truck, don't get me wrong, and it's a workhorse at 1977, it does everything we need it to do when we need it, and we need that truck even.
That door's gonna wear out in a minute.
Yeah, but, well, it's in, all of those trucks down there are an insurance policy in and of themselves. We spend the money, we maintain them and everything, good Lord willing, we don't need to use them for anything. But it's one of, but anyway, I think I've chewed up enough oxygen on this.
We're doing the $600.
Yes. Yep,
It
unless
was never really.
you're good with the $600 for the election?
Yep.
Correct, yeah, yep. I don't see any other department heads hanging out, so.
If I could just, because I have this open real quick, it just reminded me, that, Josh had requested a high priority replacement of the chipper. That's, he had estimated $90,000. That's not like on the warrant or anything, we're just going to pull from the highway heavy equipment ETF when that comes through.
Do you know what's in the ETF, as I sit here and search for it?
Yeah, it's, has year-end balance of 25,000 and we're adding 20,000 to it.
I'm gonna have to touch base with Josh. But I can do that.
I think that's the only thing he indicated was a priority for replacement this year. I think Joe Dame's doing his thing, he's rocking the analysis, he did some shopping around, found a new one for 53,000 and found some used ones for 43,000.
Good.
Can I have one last thing, and it's not really, just with the PFAS stuff, I'm not minimizing any of it, I appreciate the significance and everything, but it is worth noting that nothing has been proven that it emanates from the fire department. It's only in the eyes of the state, the scientists, everything, it's the most likely source, but it hasn't been definitively proven. And it can't be, and it won't be. It's just the common denominator. AFFF foam had all of these chemicals. You guys used to have that stuff, therefore, but it's never been proven and it can't be.
Right.
And I just think it's worth,
Absolutely.
I can read the temperature of the room and see where the fingers are pointing. I was a child when that truck was bought that had that foam on it.
Nobody's blaming you for there being PFAS in the soil. No one is blaming you for there being PFAS here.
Words have meaning, and when they're said, they mean what they say. I've heard the comments, and don't, I'm not saying, I'm not pointing at you. Comments have been made. I've heard them with my own ears. And I'm
They-
just saying, it's irresponsible to make such a statement when there's no truth to it whatsoever.
Consider the source.
It can't even be proven that it even came from the fire department, let alone me. It's just, it's ridiculous that such statements are being made, and I feel the need to defend myself. Just, well, I mean, you know how I feel.
There is absolutely no correlation between Fire Chief Mike Brooks and there being PFAS in the water and in the soil. No correlation whatsoever. I don't know of anyone who believes that.
I don't either.
So nobody has approached me with any concern even resembling that.
Huh.
The concern is that it's there, it needs to be taken care of. And in terms of, you know, traceability, we have the letter with the DES. You were corresponding with the DES in May 2022, where there seemed to be in writing an agreement, given your use, given your, given the town's use of, again, your apologies, given the town's use of the AAA phone, the AAA, and the fact that it's, like, it was a joint conclusion. It's the fire department, not Chief Mike Brooks, it is the fire department based on the DES's and Wilcox and Barton's analysis of it. Could we get down to the chemical level like Paul McKenna is suggesting? If we find all the data, if we find the phone that was used and we do soil samples and all of that? Possibly. Do we need to all acknowledge that it is 90% the fire department? I don't know. I don't know why it's not McLean. It could be DPW, unlikely.
All right. Signature items, the steel tax levy, is it?
I'm sorry, can I just make a comment on this? And again, directed to Chief Brooks. Historically, we know there was AFFF used at the fire department. But historically, that was 20, 30 years ago.
More than that.
More than that. And we've been assured by you personally that all of that AFFF is gone. There's not even any spare cans anywhere in a corner. It's all gone. It's been eradicated from the fire department for decades, in all probability. And I want to assure you that if I hear anybody, you know, saying that they think it's, you know, coming from the fire department today, then prove it. Show us. What are they using that you think is being contaminating in the water? I don't think that most of the people who are educated on this subject believe in any way, shape, or form that the current fire department is contributing to PFAS in our soil and in our water.
All right. John and Bob not being here, I don't think we're gonna have that non-public tonight. It was in regards to a matter that they are dealing with and wanted to update us on, so the non-public will not be happening. That being said, we are done.
Can I just make another comment?
Sure.
Sorry, well, no, I'm not sorry, but, I
Yeah.
was gonna make my comment during public comment, but given the crowd, I thought I would, hold off on it. But Adam, I hope we can have a civil conversation. I need to know your thinking about your comment about Selectmen's Gray suggestion to cut something out of the budget, mainly her pay, your pay, to make herself look good. Please, tell me what you're thinking.
Petition warrant article petitioned by, at the time, a citizen of this town who knew that it was going to cost more money to have 5 selectmen at this board, now sits at this board and tries to cut money out of the budget to appease the people on the other side of the aisle because she made the warrant article to make it more expensive. That's it.
Could I
It's that
actually-
simple.
It's a response.
But can I actually speak to,
Yeah.
because
You
we're
can
talking
say whatever
about
you want, just
me,
Yeah.
and when I put the warrant article out there, The town got to choose. The town got to vote. It was their decision. It was put on the table for them to vote on. And people said, I don't want to increase the budget. Okay, that's up to you at the next town meeting. It is up to the voters whether or not they agree to that budget, whether or not they agree to that. We have hacked $665 out of the Conservation Commission. We have taken bits and pieces and bits and pieces and bits and pieces there. We have chunks that we have not touched. That is a minimal amount.
We have taken tens of thousands of dollars out of the DPW budget. I did it personally and asked for that cut. I took $10,000 out of the fire department budget last year. Personally, I asked for that cut. I sit here and I make cuts all the time from every single department. Made cuts from the rec director's line last year. Made cuts from the fire department's line. I made cuts from the DPW line. I don't want to hear it, and I'm done with the conversation.
Okay, you don't get to say you don't want to hear it and cut me off.
And you weren't talking. I wasn't
You
cutting
said
you
I
off.
don't want to hear it.
Because you know what? To tell you the truth, I personally am tired of sitting at this table and being attacked by that side of the table and this side of the table. I am tired of the personal accusations. I am tired of the bullshit. I am over it. I ran here and I devoted my goddamn life to this town for the past 2 years and I get nothing but accosted for it. So you know what? And I'm sure other people in this town hall also feel the same way because it's sickening. And I am done with it.
So Adam, do you think a
No,
question
the meeting is over.
accosting
Motion to
you?
adjourn. I'm out.
You think a question is accosting you? Toughen up. What's that saying, if you can't take the heat?